Study notes in theory. We'll be going over the application security domain of the CISSP. More specifically, denial of service and distributed denial of service. My camera works a little shaky, but here we go anyway. Denial of service means to stop something from providing a service, to stop it from providing a certain function, a certain job. A web server provides a service of hosting web pages. These web pages are created using HTML. These HTML files reside on a web server. We use the HTTP protocol on our browsers to request a web page from a web server. Our request goes through the internet to the web browser, which in turn sends us the .html file that we use to view on our web browsers. The web server performs the service of providing HTML files for us to view as web pages on our computer. Right now, you've requested to watch this video on youtube.com, for which you use the HTTP protocol to request. One of YouTube's web servers provided you a service by serving up this video. So what happens when this server stops responding to your request? When it stops providing a service? It's called a denial of service. For the CISSP exam, it's important to know not only how denial of service attacks are performed, but also why. There are a few reasons. One reason that we see plastered all over news websites involves a hacker taking down a government-owned website. Either the hackers don't agree with the government in general, or they don't agree with certain actions of a government. In either case, this is considered an act of cyber terrorism. It is an act of defiance to deface or deny access to a public government website. It also shows that they, the hackers, somehow outsmarted government network security controls which are in place to prevent denial of service attacks. Basically, it shows that a single or group of hackers can take down something that belongs to an entire nation. Here's another reason why denial of service attacks occur. Somebody accidentally or purposefully unplugging the power cable to a web server is essentially performing a denial of service attack. If a web server is unplugged, it can't provide a service, and requests for web pages get denied. A denial of service attack. Here's a high-level execution of a denial of service attack. The key thing to remember for a DOS is that it uses just one computer. This computer, labeled attacker, is going to send a flood of connections to the victim computer, this web server, in hopes to overload the server memory, increase the CPU utilization, or use up all of its bandwidth. Overloading the memory, increasing the CPU usage, or quenching all of the bandwidth can cause a server to become overloaded and stop working. If a car runs out of gas, or racks up too many miles, or is driven so fast the engine burns out, it'll stop working. The same goes for servers. This one computer uses a single internet connection to send a flood of connections to the victim computer. It can be a connection that sends multiple TCP connections. It can be a connection that sends multiple UDP connections. Or it can send multiple ICMP connections in the form of pings. An attacker can send hundreds of these connections from one computer in hopes to knock out a web server. Then, when someone like you or me wants to access a website, we see that the page is not loading up. The server is down. Now let's take a look at a DDoS, which stands for Distributed Denial of Service. The path of execution is essentially the same, but there is a key difference. Our attack landscape changes a little bit. Let's put our attacker here. In a DDoS, instead of using just one computer, an attacker can have multiple computers, hundreds or even thousands. When an attacker has control of this many computers, they are collectively known as a botnet. This botnet is controlled by an attacker who is otherwise now known as a command and control center. The command and control center can connect to all the computers on this botnet. Then, at the same time, the attacker can coordinate all the computers in this botnet to begin sending TCP, UDP, or ICMP connections hurtling toward a web server. As you can see, this is a much more devastating attack than a DOS, which uses just one internet connection as opposed to hundreds. It is much tougher for a server to withstand a DDoS than it is to withstand a DOS. A DOS and a DDoS are important types of network security attacks to learn for not only the CISSP exam, but also for your information security career. Denial of service attacks are still very common in our world today, and are still an effective weapon used by attackers. Our next video from Study Notes and Theory will be talking about countermeasures for a DOS. Thanks a lot for watching this video.